speaker is an amazing individual. I have never seen this person without a hat. He's got a different one on his head today. But if you don't know who Rocky Garza is, you need to, because one of the things that Rocky really helps people unlock, folks, is their uniqueness. I saw Rocky speak last year at an event, and I really grew a likeness to what he talked about, because it wasn't so much the rah, 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 motivational inspiration, which of course he's also good at. It was really getting an understanding of what makes me unique as an individual, what makes me different, and more important, how can my uniqueness and how can my past stories be unlocked so that I can actually bring some greatness and some good to the world. And so I'm so excited to have, for the first time on Conquer the Crisis, an amazing individual, and that is the one and only Rocky Garza, who's going to talk today about finding your uniqueness, hopefully, and more importantly, what makes you special. So how are you doing today, Rocky?
And I'm doing wonderful. How you doing, Brad?
Good. I see you got a little fuzz.
That's right. Well, I figure I'd just get my quarantine beard going on while I can.
There you go. There you go. And it's not even November when men are supposed to grow the beard.
I know. Well, but what is it? Is it November? Is it September? Is it March? Nobody knows what it is, so it's fine.
Exactly. Well, you're looking great. You've got the floor. So let's share your story. Let's share, more importantly, your uniqueness, and let's help everybody conquer the crisis today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. A couple of housekeeping things as we get going. I am a huge fan of interaction. I'm going to ask questions to you. I would love for you to utilize that comment box there as well. So just in the chat box, those of you that are there and have the capability, if you'll just throw a yes or a high five or a hand or something in there, just so that I know that you're in that box, because that's where we're going to answer questions and we're going to communicate and chat with each other there. Again, like I said, I got thoughts and questions for us. I want to keep you moving in it. The last two speakers, Darren and Coach Dana, both of those incredible guys. And so what a privilege to be able to hear those folks today. My first question for us is this as we get started. As we begin to think about how we're going to conquer the crisis, and not just even the crisis we are in now, I think as we think about how are we going to conquer the crisis and any crisis that comes in our life, whether it is the midst of an unknown pandemic, whether it is the midst of something happening in our life that we were unaware of, or potentially for many of us, it is just an internal dialogue, a story, or potentially a trauma in which we have faced that has become the crisis that has kept us from moving forward and given us the ability to see who we really are as human beings and individuals. I think in the midst of any crisis, whether it is something that is external out of our control, simply like something we are in now, or it is something else we are experiencing, I think there's a question that has come to my mind over the course of the last 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks, however long this has been that we have been at home. But a phrase has come to my mind. And so here's what I want to do. Here's how I want you to, first question I want you to ask yourself. I think in the middle of any crisis and the ability to conquer any crisis, it requires for us to have an understanding of the doubt that exists in our life. And we must be able to kill doubt and then replace that by building a deep conviction about who we are, what we believe, and how we want to use that for good in our life. And so the first way that I think we see that or do that is I want to ask you this question. Over the course of the last 5 or 6 weeks, I think that's the most pertinent crisis that many of us feel we are in, regardless if we work in corporate, we are a full-time parent, we are an entrepreneur, we have our own business. My question for you is this. Have you spent more time in the last 4 or 5 weeks looking out the window, or have you spent more time looking in the mirror? And here's what I mean by that. Have you spent more time looking out the window, trying to see and assume what might be and what could be, the things you wish you had that you don't, and how green the grass is someplace else? Or have you had the ability to pause long enough to ask ourselves, can we look in the mirror so we have the ability to not only have a reflection back on who we are, but to see, know, and understand what is good, true, and beautiful about what it is that we are seeing? See, I think when our ability is that for many of us, what happens is we get caught in a rut. We get stuck because we inevitably spend more time looking out the window than we do in the mirror. And so what happens is we lose sight of who we are. We allow doubt to creep into our life. And when we do that, we don't allow ourselves the opportunity or the freedom to build a deep conviction about who we are, so we can maintain the ability to say, this is the stake in the ground that I will not waver from. And this will be the thing that is a driving force forward in what I do. So what I want us to do in our time today in the next 20 minutes or so is I want us to be able to think introspectively about ourselves. I want us to have the ability to look at where we are in our life and say, is there a space? Because I believe every human being has it. Darren and Coach Dana both talked about it, and they used different language. Coach Dana talked about tripwires, right? Darren talked about the expectations we have or the things that we see, and I'm just going to encapsulate all that, and I'm going to refer to that as doubt. Because I think doubt is a part of the human condition, but I believe doubt, we have the opportunity to give ourselves a chance to break doubt away, to unearth it, to look at it, to put it to death, and then to build a deep conviction about who we are as human beings, because I think that really allows us a freedom and opportunity to move forward. And so my question for us as we move forward, and the thing I want to uncover today, is how can we put the lies to death, and then how do we build a deep conviction so we can create a life that we deeply believe in? And so I want us to start here together. See, I spent a large portion of my life believing the wrong story. And now, to be clear, it wasn't intentional, right? It's not like I woke up one day and said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to live my life based on somebody else's story of who I am. But at the end of the day, that's actually what I did. At the end of the day, you see, I believe for most of us that we are living the wrong story. It's not ours. It's not the one that was written for us, and it's definitely not the one that we actually want to be living. And so before you get offended, I'm not saying there's anything inherently wrong or by default bad with you, or somehow you're doing something that's going to be a failure. All I'm saying is, I think for many of us, at least I know it was my story, that I lived a large portion of my life believing the wrong story. See, what I'm saying is that I think many of us get caught and stuck in survival mode. We've heard every speaker so far talk about the moments where we have had the inability to be able to say, I really want to go to that, but I don't know if I can. It's the first of the month. What's going to stop me? What is the story? What is the doubt? What is the thing that is keeping me and forcing me to stay in survival mode that prevents me from being able to engage deeply in conviction mode? Now let me make one thing really clear. I think survival is a beautiful thing. And I think for many of us, it is what has kept us alive up until this moment. And for many of us, it has been the thing that has given us the opportunity to walk out of really hard situations for a really long time. Not knocking survival. But I don't believe that living in a constant state of survival is sustainable or at all how we were made or designed to live. If anything, I think we were made and designed to be in a position where we could thrive. See, I didn't always think this way. It wasn't always my default response. I, like you, spent a large portion of my life surviving. Now, to be clear, it wasn't life or death, okay? So I want you to hear, for me and my story, it wasn't about making sure I could find something to eat or have a roof over my head. All those things were always more than adequate in my life. If anything, not only did I have everything that I needed, I typically had everything that I wanted. So how can this be true and still feel like I was living in survival mode? I think it's a really good question. So there's a few things I've longed for my entire life. No matter my situation, where I lived, how many times I moved, where I spent Christmas, how many Tommy Hilfiger polos I owned. That was in junior high, and I'm 37, so you can put a time frame on that. I'll call that the early 2000s. Or how many colorful Express shirts I had. There was always something missing for me, right? There was always something that I longed for. I wanted to know that I mattered. I wanted to know that my voice mattered. Hell, let's really say it. I wanted to be wanted. I longed to know that I was valuable for who I was, more than just what I could do. And not that I think that what we do or what we can do is not important. I think it's wildly important. But I don't think there's any weight or substance to what we do if we don't have a deep conviction about who we are. I wanted to walk home, and I wanted to walk into a home that looked and felt like everybody else's. I wanted to have traditions. I wanted to eat the same food on every holiday in the same place and the same people around the same table. I wanted to know what to expect. And for me and my story, and I don't know if this relates to you, but I didn't want to get caught off guard again. I wanted to believe that someone wanted to pursue me without me having to give an exorbitant amount of energy to them. And I believe, for me, friend, this is where doubt was born. In the small moments of reflection where I looked around and painted pictures in my mind that belonged to somebody else, where I took the words that were told to me about me and I let those things define who I was, where I allowed them to sit in the driver's seat of my life. And so what we're going to set out to do today in the next 19 or 18 or 17 minutes or so is I want us to dive into the stories that we tell ourselves. I want us to identify where they come from, discover what is really true about who we are, that I want us to be able to build a deep conviction about what those things are and how we see ourselves, our story, and the life we deeply believe in, so that we can make sure that we move forward. And so to begin, I want us to define doubt. I believe that doubt is fear, obstacle, insecurity, the unknown, risk, spontaneity, worry, anxiety, nervousness, timidity, feeling stuck. And I think that those are just a few of its friends. And I believe they all work together to convince us that we are probably not quite as good as we think that we are. And we're definitely not as valuable as we think that we are. And so from this point forward, regardless of what we call it or how it shows up or what it tries to convince us of, I want us to commit to one another beginning today that we're not going to let it win any longer. That we're going to look at it, identify it, we're going to dig it up from the root, we're going to look it right in the face, and we're going to call it exactly what it is. And when necessary, we're going to put it to death. For some of us today, for some of you today, regardless of where you are in the world, there are things about you, there are things about your story, there are things you say and you believe about who you are that I am going to ask and call and encourage, and hopefully out of a deep challenge and conviction, ask you to be able to identify those, pull those out, look at them and say, I want to put that to death because I want to walk freely moving forward. And so you're going to hear a lot of things from a lot of people today about how to activate things inside of you and how to overcome and not just in conquering the crisis, but how to really perform and how to really get deep inside and how you're going to make sure that you can increase in whatever area of your life that is. And so what I'm going to ask you to do now is two things for the next 15 minutes. I'm going to ask you that you would give grace and space, but let me define those. I'm going to ask that you would give yourself enough space. Here's how I define space. Space is a momentary pause to assess what is. So I'm going to ask that over the course of our time that you would give yourself enough space. It's not for me, it's for you, wherever you are in the world, to be able to say, I want to give myself enough space, a momentary pause to assess what is, not good or bad, but what is. Because I believe if we can assess what is, that will give us a chance to then communicate and share with ourselves enough grace. I define grace as our ability to see ourselves in somebody else. And I believe when we put those two things together, it will allow us to really uncover the story in our life so that we can say, where is doubt at and how do I get rid of it and how do I build a deep conviction of where I'm at? So if you're with me, you can give me a yes or a thumbs up or an emoji or something in that chat box. If you're there, if you're watching there live with us on Facebook, you can do the same thing. I'm asking that you would give yourself enough grace and space in the next 15 minutes to do what is required for us to be able to uncover and see what is that thing in us that we can take out that will give us the ability to say, where is the deep conviction in who I am and what that means. And so where does doubt come from? If doubt is in fact something that is deep innate and is a human condition, a part of who we are because we are survival creatures, how do we take doubt and identify it? Well, for me, here's where I believe doubt comes from. If you're taking notes or got a pen and a paper, this is something you're going to want to write down. If you're a mental note taker, well, then you have a better skill than I do because I have a bad memory. So if you have a good memory, more power to you. Here's the two ways that I believe doubt is created. I believe that doubt is created out of two stories that are simultaneously running in our lives at all times. The story number one I define as the stories that are told to us about us. Those are the things that people tell us about us. Those are the stories that we have been told our whole life. Things like, Rocky, you are so this, or Rocky, you are too this. Things in my life like, Rocky, you're too intense. Rocky, you're too emotional. Rocky, you're too vulnerable. Rocky, you're so into identity. Couldn't you be more about business? Rocky, you're not business savvy enough. Rocky, what kind of coach are you exactly? An identity coach? What exactly does that mean? How much do people pay you to do what? All of us have stories that have been told to us about us. And I believe that a lot of those stories were told to us by well-meaning, loving people in our life, yet I believe they have had a profound impact on who we are. Anytime you think about to yourself, when you're driving in the car, you're in the shower, or you wake up early and somebody says or gives you the words T-O-O or so, to or so, Rocky, you're so this, Brad, you're so this, Carolina, you're so this, Kira, you're so this, Phil, you're so that, Law, you're to this, Michelle, you're to this. Those are the stories that people tell us about us. And so I want you to pause here for a second because I want you to begin to identify in your mind, everybody has something. When I say that to you, there's something that immediately clicks and makes you go, oh yeah, I have something. There's a story that's been told to me about me that I have in my mind and I think about it all the time. So if you're willing, I want you to write that down on a piece of paper somewhere. If you are even more willing, I want you to put that in the chat box. Okay? If you're even more willing, I want you to put us there. Write down in the chat box, share with me, what is the story that has been told to you about you? What is that thing that you know is not true, but you tell yourself is true because someone told it about you? Just take a minute. I want you to write that down. The things that potentially get in the way, the things that have the ability to rob us of who we really are. Because here's the second narrative. If it's the stories that are told to us about us are narrative number one, narrative number two is it's the stories you tell yourself about yourself. These are the things that you say to yourself in the quiet of your own brain. So here's a reality. Those of you that are writing, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Look at me really quick. I want to tell you this. When it comes to the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves, it's for this reason. It's because when you talk to yourself, you cannot hear yourself. I'm going to say that again because some of us are going to miss that. When you talk to yourself, you cannot hear yourself. You're just talking. You cannot talk and listen at the same time. You talk. And so that's why we can get into the car and we can convince ourselves in a 19-minute drive from office to home, and now from home to home, because many of us don't go to an office. And so if we can get in the car or the shower or the backyard or the loop that we take conference calls around the neighborhood, and you can convince yourself of in and out of anything, no matter how ludicrous it is, when you are talking to yourself, because we can convince ourselves of anything when we're talking. And so can you imagine the danger? Can you sense and feel where doubt can creep in when we least expect it if we allow the stories that are told to us about us, and we allow that to intersect with the story we tell ourselves about ourselves? And what happens is when those two stories intersect and intertwine, all of a sudden it creates what I believe is a lowercase t truth, meaning it may in fact be a lie. It may in fact not be true. It may in fact not be who you are, but we believe it to be true. We believe it to be true because we've allowed the stories that are told to us about us and the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves. We allow those two things to collide. And not only do they collide, but in a very, very short amount of time, all of a sudden they wrap themselves together. And when they wrap themselves together, they become a truth. You see, that's how I believe doubt is formed. That's where I believe doubt is formed, is because we inevitably tell ourselves something and someone has told us something. My whole life, people have said, Rocky, you're too emotional. You're too vulnerable. You're too intense. Calm down. Could you just be into sports? Does people have to come over for dinner? Do we have to go deep every time? Do you always have to have that kind of conversation? Is that always something we have to do? Is that right? Like those are stories that have been told to me about me. When I allow that to pair up with the story I tell myself about myself, Rocky, did they care? You're not really, are you really a performance coach? Are you really going to be able to help them? Does it really matter? Do people really want to talk about their feelings? Do they want to pick up or uncover what it is about their 10-year-old or 11-year-old or what happened to them when they were young? Does that really matter? And does it have an effect on their business? Isn't there going to be an ROI on that part? And I have to be able to uncover what are the two truths in those stories that allows me to go in and pull out what is true, remove the doubt, and build deep conviction in who I am. We have here, Ron says, I'm too giving. Kira says that I cannot finish. I can't finish it. Law says I was going to be disabled for the rest of my life. Michelle says, can never do the things that I want to do. How long are we going to let the stories that somebody else tell us about ourselves, how long are we going to allow that to rule? Or are we going to allow ourselves the opportunity to kill that doubt and bring it to light so we can live in deep conviction? See, here's the flip side. Now what I want you to do is I want you to write down what are the stories you tell yourself about yourself, especially if they are complementary to the one that was told to you about you. So think about it. When you are thinking to yourself by yourself, what do you say? What is that thing that gets in the way? What is that thing that you tell yourself when you're talking to yourself? Remember, you're not listening, you're just talking. What are the stories that you tell yourself about yourself? What are the things that you're saying? Coach Dana said it earlier, everybody knows their strengths, but what do? We focus on our weaknesses. How much time do you spend focused on the things that you know you are terrible at, convincing yourselves that must be the root and foundation for who you are? Where's my return on my investment? Love that, Ron. See, when we have the ability to uncover, to go, what is it about who I am that is true? And we can say, you know what, Rocky, are you too vulnerable? You know what? No, that's crazy. You know what's true? I am vulnerable. Hey, Rocky, you're too intense. Oh, really? How about I am just intense? Right? How about you're too giving? How about you're just giving and everybody else sucks? That's not a nice thing. You shouldn't say that about people, but you get my gist. Maybe you can't ever actually do the things that you want to do because you've consistently told yourself you don't have what you need to get it done. Michelle, do you see how those two things go together? Michelle said, what's the story people tell her, story she's been told about her? She said, I can never do the things I want to do. And then what does she tell herself? I don't have what I need to accomplish it. Well, guess what? Guess what's going to take root? Guess what's going to take root? The doubt is going to say, it's never going to happen. Instead of saying, what is the deep conviction? How do we take that doubt, Michelle? How do we take and look at it and go, this is not true at all. It's absolutely a lie. I want to put doubt to death. I want to build deep conviction, the deep-seated belief I'm unwilling to waver from. And we take that doubt and we go, actually, I can do what it is that I want to do. And I have everything I need to get that done. And if I don't yet have it now, am I willing to do what is required to get that? See, I can't control that for you. That's the beautiful thing about killing doubt and building conviction. It's up to you. It's called a self-assessment. I can tell you what I see, but I cannot change it. I can give you tools and resources and be the unbiased third party. I can be the mirror that will reflect it for you. I can be the thing that says, are you ready and willing to look at this and take it out and put it to death and build deep conviction in who you are? Absolutely, I can walk with you and do that. But I can only walk with you and do that if you are willing to take enough space and momentary pause to assess what is, so that you have the ability to extend enough grace to yourself and those around you, so that you have the opportunity to build a deep conviction in who you are and what it is you believe. That's the most important part. That's the thing that's going to be required. It's going to mean that you're going to have to take the time to do that. And listen. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to others. As I look back and think about my life, my mom loved me. My grandmother loved me. My dad loves me. My family loves me. Those stories that I think about in my life, they meant well. The people who have said to you, you're too giving, you're not good enough, you don't have what you need. Is it really going to work? Do you really have what it takes? Can you really be a leader of others? Can you really? You see, we can't control the stories that are told to us about us. But we can absolutely control the stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves. And if we are willing to live a life of consistency and deep conviction, that we allow ourselves to look at the truth and say, you know what is true, Michelle? What is true is that if you decided you wanted to do it, I believe you have everything you need right now to begin to move forward and take your first step. But it's going to require clarity in who you are. It's going to require conviction about that it is good and true. And it's going to require the courage for you to take a step moving forward to say, I want to do that. It's going to require you to take those 3 steps. It's going to require you to have a deep understanding of identity and who are you. Stop talking about your profession. No one cares. When I say, who are you? I'm asking, when I say, what do you do? I want to know, what do you do in your life? Who are you as a human being? And where's the deep-seated value in that? And where's the clarity and confidence and conviction that comes from that? And from clarity comes confidence and conviction. And from conviction comes courage. And then guess what? You take the step and you do the thing you set out to do. I've made it a thing in my life. And let me make very clear when I say this. This is not a value statement. It's not good or bad or better or worse. I'm not comparing myself to anybody else. I'm talking about me, the human being, my conviction, not my profession, my human. Number 1 goal of 2020, eat breakfast and dinner 300 times with my family. It's not good or bad. I'm not talking about anybody else. It doesn't matter what anybody else does. It's irrelevant for me, because that's a deep-seated conviction. Why? Because I have the clarity about the kind of father and the husband I believe I need to be. And to do that, to have that kind of clarity and to live in that conviction, I got to eat breakfast and dinner 300 times together. And so am I courageous enough when opportunities arise to say, hey, I can't do that, I can't go, or yes, I absolutely will do that and go? And how is that going to relate to the deep thing that I believe, the conviction that I have? And that's what I want to challenge you to. Have you done the work to assess the reality of who you are as a human being and given yourself a language? I think many of us are illiterate to who we are. It's not that we don't know ourselves, that we don't have the right language or words to talk about who we are. We're so concerned with the optics everybody else has about what they think about us, and we don't have the language to just be unapologetic about who we are. If there's anything that you have the ability to walk away from today, it's this. I want you to be able to stand unapologetically in who you are as a human being. Forget your job or your performance for just a second. It's not that it's not important. In this moment, it doesn't matter. I want you to stand, not move, not run, not chase. Stand unapologetically in who you are as a human being. Look in the mirror. Stop looking out the window. And when you reflect back at what you see, do you believe it is good, true, and beautiful? And in that, do you live with deep conviction so you have the ability to say, I'm going to stand unapologetically in who I am and remain fully aware that my neighbor is not my competition and my own purpose. I'm going to tell you that again because some of you don't get that. I'm going to say it again. Stand unapologetically in who you are and remain fully aware that your neighbor is not your competition and your own purpose. But where we get caught and where we get trapped is that we are unwilling to do the work required to kill doubt and build conviction. We allow ourselves to be caged in, and doubt rules the day. And we wake up, we put out fires. The things that we think about inevitably are the things that run our mind and run our life. We don't have the ability to actually dive in or dig deep and say, do I know who I am? Am I going to live confidently, stand unapologetically, and remind myself that my purpose is not based on somebody else's, it's mine. And I think for us to get there, for us to take what Darren said and put into practice, for us to take what Coach Dana said and put into practice, to take what you're going to hear right after me when Coach Burke comes on and fires you up and gets you moving and gets you going, in order for you to do and take the steps that they are going to give you to move forward and to build the life that you believe in and want, you're going to have to look in the mirror and believe it there first. Right? When Coach Burke comes on, you can't be a monster producer if you don't believe that you're going to be a monster producer. The prey drive has to be activated when you first are willing to look in the mirror and say, have I killed the doubt enough to build a deep enough conviction to take what it is that I see in front of me and allow someone to help me move forward? Please hear me, friends, when I say this. I do not believe that you are inherently bad or broken. I believe that we have been conditioned to not give ourselves the time or respect to look deep and inward in who we are, to give ourselves the ability to understand that our value is not based on our performance, that we are not called to conquer, but we are called to cultivate. And so I would ask you first, friend, would you go to the garden in front of you? Would you pull the weeds, till the soil, sow your seeds, get rid of the doubt so that you can build deep conviction, so that when the plant grows and the fruit comes out, you can look at your garden and say, the reason this occurred is because I was willing to kill doubt and build conviction in my life. My hope is that you today, from Darren, from Coach Dana, from me, and everybody else that will follow for the rest of the day, spend some time looking in the mirror and less time looking out the window. Stand unapologetically in who you are. Remain fully aware that your neighbor is not the competition in your own purpose. And above anything else, my hope is that you have the ability and the freedom to kill doubt and build conviction in your life, so that every day when you wake up, it is not based on survival and fear, but it is based on a deep-seated conviction that there is no one in the world like you, and that your neighbor is not your competition in your own purpose. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much, and I really appreciate you having me.
Rocky, thank you so much for being here. That was a moving and an inspirational message, but more importantly, a lot of thought in that. I love it. One thing before I let you go is how can all of the viewers around the globe connect with you? Can you share your website? And I know you've got a book coming out here shortly that's on your website, the pre-release. Talk about that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'd absolutely love that. So the easiest way to get in contact, you can also obviously find us on social channels, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. There's not a lot of guys named Rocky Garza. There's definitely not a lot of guys that are this bald and have these eyebrows. So I'm easy to find. Just look for me. So you can find me there. I'd love for you to follow along. You can shoot us a text message. I threw it there in the comments. Oh, except I think I sent it only to the panelists. So I'll send it to everybody in a minute. But you can send us a text message to 469-649-8441. We send a text message every day, Monday through Friday, a way to challenge, encourage, and motivate you. We'd love for you to join that with us. And then, I got a book called Kill Doubt, Build Conviction. It is out for pre-order right now, so you can pick up a copy today. Just go to rockygarza.com/book or rockygarza.com/coaching, and you can join one of our small, intimate identity coaching communities. We'd love to have you there as well.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Enjoy the Memorial Day weekend. Be safe, be well, and I look forward to connecting with you and doing bigger things together as we move forward.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Brad. Hope you guys have a wonderful weekend.
You bet.